Hello everyone, welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I will be teaching you some information on IELTS Task 1 Academic today. Let me just bring that up here. Today is a special class. It was requested by one of our YouTube sponsors, so the chat mode is set for sponsors today. A couple of perks of being a sponsor: you get our exam books and you get the chat option in these kinds of classes. So hopefully we'll have some of those sponsors jumping in. All right, so today we are looking at a Task 1 process essay. We'll go through this step by step. So this is what it looks like, the full process. Just a few important notes before we get going on this. Hi, Arcana. Nice to see you in class. Arcana, can you tell me if you can hear me okay and see the board behind me all right? Just confirm that for me so I know that everything is good on your end. And as usual, our materials, thanks for that, Arcana. And as usual, our materials are coming from our website. So for academic IELTS, please go to aehelp.com. And for general IELTS, please go to gieltshelp.com. We have lots of materials there and new materials being uploaded regularly every week. Last week, we released a whole bunch of interactive exams that you can practice on your phone or on your tablet that give you feedback, let you know about what questions you get right and wrong. So definitely if you're aiming to pass IELTS, improve by a couple of band scores, join our full course, learn those right strategies. Again, today's class is a sponsored chat only. Tomorrow we'll have an all chat class for everybody else. Okay, so Arcana, you are the only one in here so far. Hopefully some of our other sponsors will jump in as well to get this valuable information. If anybody watching has questions, you can contact me at adrian@aehelp.com. We could always set up a Skype practice speaking interview. Of course, that's a paid service. Writing and editing services also available. Almost done with the announcements. So today we have this sponsor chat. Tomorrow we'll be looking at a reading section. After that we'll look at writing task 2, and you can see our class schedule on our YouTube channel. On the weekend we will not have classes, and then we'll be back on the 18th with some listening practice. All right, Manisha, nice to see you in class as well. That's great. Okay, so for process essays, okay, so where you have to either write about a diagram or a flow chart, there's a really good series. It comes from US television. It's called How's It Made? And every episode talks about how something is made. For example, coffee beans, baseball bats, trumpets, lots of different episodes, and many of those are actually available on YouTube. So to learn the right language and skills for writing or talking about a process, about a manufacturing process, how to make an object or an item, I highly recommend checking out a few of these episodes of How's It Made. They're entertaining and they contain some very good vocabulary and grammar for describing that process. So check that out, Manisha. Check that out, Arcana, and the other sponsors who are there and people who are watching. Okay, great. So you have a process essay. It looks like this. Let's have a look at the text here. It's a little bit small, so I'll move it around. Okay, so here, again, you have 20 minutes to write this task. Okay, so you should spend about 20 minutes on task 1. Don't spend any more time than that because your task 2 is worth 2/3 of your mark. So it's a much heavier weight, so you want to leave your 40 minutes for that. So here it says the diagram below shows the process used to manufacture metal piping for domestic and industrial applications. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so let me get this downsized a little bit here. And then we'll talk about how to write a high band score essay for this type of diagram process essay, okay? Again, it's an expository essay. Hi, Vandana. Nice to see you jump in as well. So again, this is a process essay. Process essay is a type of expository essay, okay? So task 1 is always an expository essay, no matter what kind of a graph or chart you get. You have to use third-person voice. That's right, Manisha. So there's no I, there's no we, there's no us, there's no you. It's just third-person omnipotent voice, okay? So let's make a couple important notes here about task 1. So task 1 diagram process essay is a type of expository. Now, if you don't know what expository essay means, you should look that up. That's important for your studies. Written in the third person voice, which means no using I, me, you, we, okay? So avoid those kinds of pronouns. All right, and of course it follows the same structure as your other task 1. So the first couple of sentences is your overview. Okay. So here, let me start by asking you a question. What's my first step? So I get to the writing section of academic IELTS. I open up the booklet, the test booklet, and I see this kind of a diagram and this kind of a question. What should be my first step for the overview? So what should I do first? Any ideas? And again, any comment is okay here, Arcana, Manisha, Vandana. So you can paraphrase the statement, absolutely, okay? So here we can paraphrase. The diagram below shows the process used to manufacture metal piping, okay? So how can we paraphrase that? We can say this diagram depicts the steps taken to produce metal pipes for the home and commercial markets. Okay, sure. And then, of course, we want to describe that. So I did that very nicely. Arcana, you're saying the given picture shows how the process of making metal piping for different applications, such as industrial and domestic, that's a partial sentence, okay? You need to complete that, is done. So you need is done on the end of that to make it a complete sentence, okay? So pay attention. Make sure you don't write sentence fragments. That's not good, all right? But the start is good there, Arcana. You just want to finish that up. And it's a passive voice, so you need to finish it with is done. Okay, so we've done that. Now we want a little bit more for our overview. So we look at this picture, okay? What do you think would be a good way to continue talking about this? Let me see if I can get this a little bit smaller for you. Okay. Okay, so you don't need to see all the information here for the overview. Just looking at this is okay. So what would be a good couple of sentences for the overview? What would be the main points here, looking at the whole picture? Because in the overview, you're looking at the global picture, okay? So what would be the global picture in this diagram? What should you look at? It's okay if it's not clear here, Vandana. You don't need to see the words, okay? It's not important for the overview. You should be able to give me the overview with just looking at these pictures, all right? So tell me what the overview is. Starting and ending procedure, yep, so that's a good point. So here there's a solid piece of metal. That's the first raw item, and then here you have a finished metal pipe, right? So that could be something that's good. Yeah, absolutely, Vandana. So the number of steps required to achieve this process. So here we have 3, here we have another 3, another 3, and another 3 to get to the end product. So altogether, some simple math here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 times 3 is 12. So there are basically 12 steps from start to finish, right? So there are kind of 12 stages that the piece of metal goes through before it becomes that end product. Yeah, and that's probably enough for your overview. Now, if you want to get really clever, you can see that here we have some furnaces that heat up. That's why you have these reds. So you have these heating steps in the process. You have cutting steps in the process. And then you also have these other shaping. So it's basically about heating and shaping, right? So the two key aspects that happen in the process are heating and shaping the metal. So if you're really clever, those would be the 3 points to include in your overview: the start, the finish, the number of steps, and the main applications in the process. All right. So let's include that. Can you write me some example sentences? Again, this is a special class for sponsors, so this is your privilege to request these special topics. I think Manisha was the one who requested this topic, and I want to give you a chance to show your own knowledge before I write the response. So try to continue for my overview here, okay? So here this diagram depicts the steps taken to produce metal pipes for the home and commercial markets. Okay, now let's start with the beginning and the end, the number of steps and the key parts. So write me a couple of example sentences, Arcana, Manisha, Vandana. Yeah, okay, the starting, it's not key material. It's better to say raw material. And don't be shy, write the full sentences, girls and guys. So the starting raw material is a cylindrical. Now, of course, I'm going to be teaching you some vocabulary here as well. Cylindrical solid metal pipe. Okay. So here it's solid, it's not hollow, right? Cylindrical means it's that shape, it's that long, raw shape. Key means important, but raw actually means that it's the basic material used in the process. So the word raw is a better piece of vocabulary here. So the starting raw material is a cylindrical solid metal pipe, which will produce the end result, which is used, try to stay in present tense always, which is used to produce the end product. Sure, okay, so what should I write after that? Or which is used to get molded into a specific metal pipe. Sure. Okay, so what's the next sentence? So based on what we just talked about, again, remember the 12 steps here, right? So I want to say something about that in the overview if I can. What kind of a sentence would be good to describe that this is a 12-stage process? If I want to be actually much more accurate, I can count them. So I can say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if we take out the end product and so on, there's actually 10 procedures that it goes through, okay? So there are 10 steps in the process, so there are 12 stages in the process from start to finish. Sure, Manisha, and you can keep it very simple. You don't have to write super complex in order to get a good score. It just has to be clear, accurate, without grammar mistakes, okay? Vandana says it's an intense and complex process involving 10 stages. Yeah, that works as well. So there are 10 stages from start to finish in this manufacturing process. Now, I said talk about the heating and the shaping, but maybe just save that for your summary, okay? Whatever you don't include in the overview, you can include into the summary. And in my case, I'm going to decide to keep that for my summary. So talking about the fact that most of this process is some sort of heating and shaping, I'll say that in the summary. We'll get there at the end, okay? So that's great. That's enough for your overview. Let's look at it. This diagram depicts, okay, it's one. So we need the S there. This diagram depicts the steps taken to produce metal pipes for the home and commercial markets. The starting raw material is a cylindrical solid metal pipe, which is used to produce the end product or the end piping. There are 10 stages from start to finish in this manufacturing process. Great, so that's a good, solid overview. Now, you need to get into the analysis, all right? So that's our second part, just like with any other task one, or analyses in plural, okay? And then we just go step by step. I think, this is my opinion, that this type of task one is maybe one of the easiest. So if you get this kind of a task one, you're actually quite lucky because as long as you have a good idea of what you're doing, it's probably one of the easiest kinds of essays for task one to write about. Okay, so here what you want to do is you want to look at each step and combine what you're looking at into sentences. So into clear, full sentence, well-constructed grammar for each step. Now, of course, here you don't want to write a sentence for each one, okay? That doesn't work. So don't, especially if you have 12 different steps or 10 different parts, you don't want to write a sentence for each one. You want to kind of combine them, and you need good words to join these elements together, okay? So here we have a metal billet, and the metal billet goes into a rotary heating furnace. Now, the next step here is the piercer. Do you know what pierce means? Vandana or Arcana, Manisha, do you know the meaning of the word pierce? I can make this a little bit bigger because we really only need to be looking at about 3 of these at a time. So do you know what the word pierce means? Yeah, it means to make a hole. That's right, Arcana. Is there any other way to say pierce? Any other words? Any synonyms for the word pierce? And again, for all of those students watching, I'm really happy you've joined this class. Again, just a refresher here, this is a sponsors chat only. If you become a sponsor for our YouTube channel, you can join these classes and you get all of our 6 full practice exams to follow these classes. So it's definitely worth that extra step. Another way to say the word pierce is puncture. Okay, puncture. So before you get into that, one of the most important thoughts to consider with each of these is asking yourself why. Okay, so here you have a metal billet. The metal billet goes into a heating furnace. Now here you should be asking the question why. So when you're looking at one of these manufacturing processes for task one, an important question here to ask yourself so that you can create these really good sentences is why. Why does that happen? So girls and guys, why do we take the metal billet and put it into a heating furnace? Okay, penetrate is a good one. Puncture, penetrate, pierce. Yeah, sure. Baljit, no, the sponsor chat only classes start at 15 o'clock, but I'm happy that you got in here and you're able to catch it, okay? It's the all chat classes that start at 16:30. Anyway, let's get back to the point here. So you have the metal billet, goes into this heating furnace. Why does it go in there? Why do you think it goes into that heating furnace? What's the reason behind it? And it's fairly simple. So these diagrams are usually fairly simple diagrams. Well, look at the next step here. You can see that there's a hot metal pipe there that's being pierced. So obviously the heating here happens so that the piercing process can function or can happen smoothly, right? So just look at the process tree and you should be able to answer that why question. So Vandana says, let's start by saying the raw metal billet is heated using the rotary furnace to make it soft enough to be punctured in the next step. Vandana, that's excellent. That's exactly the goal of the why question, and that's exactly what you want to write in order to start with a good sentence. So now in a process essay is where you want to use words like first, second, third, fourth, next, after that, then, finally, and these kinds of process essay words. A lot of students, this is a side note, a lot of students use first, second, third in their task 2 essay or for diagrams, and often that's misused. First, second, third is especially used in these kinds of process essays, and you should not use them in task 2. In task 2, you should use other words to join your ideas together. So here, you have a good start there, Vandana, so I'll take that. First, the raw metal billet, and use the information from the graph, make sure you don't make mistakes there, is heated using a rotary furnace. To make it soft, to be punctured in the next step. Yeah, absolutely. So good. So that basically discusses and describes these 3 steps here, right? So we've talked about the metal billet going into the furnace, making it soft enough to be punctured by the piercer or the piercing machine. Okay, and we want to be specific. All right? So, good. All right, so we've gotten that far. Now we can continue. So here we go down to the next set of stages. And then here you see, okay, there's this MPM machine for shaping. Okay, and then after the MPM machine for shaping, it goes into the walking beam furnace. All right, so again, here we want to say why. Again, okay, that's your key question here. So in each of these steps, you want to go through the why. Once you have that answer in your head, then you can write a good sentence, okay? So there's no melting here, absolutely, Vandana. There's no melting here, okay? It doesn't say melt it down or anything like that. So why do you think it goes into the MPM shaping before it goes into the walking beam furnace? What's the logic of this process here? Okay, so why are they doing that? Arcana, Baljit, Manisha? What's the goal? Why shape it? Now look at this. Obviously you see several pipes in here, so why would I want to shape it here before this stage here? There's always a simple answer here. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to think overly complex thoughts. Just keep your thoughts simple. So I have this kind of a walking beam furnace where I have several of these metal tubes going in, and what might happen if I don't have the right shape? So think about it in the opposite. If I don't do the shaping here, then what could possibly go wrong here? So Vandana says, afterwards, the metal is shaped into a particular size and surface before going into the walking beam furnace. Yes, absolutely, Vandana. You're probably doing this shaping, or this manufacturing is doing this shaping, so that you can actually fit these beams properly into that next furnace, right? Yeah, absolutely, Manisha. Same idea. Good. So you're starting to get the logic of how that works, okay? So you can use the word afterwards or second. Afterwards, the metal tubes go through a shaping and sizing process in the what's the name of it? MPM machine, so they can fit into the walking beam furnace. Now, remember what the question says. So these task 2 questions almost always say, summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So here I can make a comparison between the walking beam furnace and the rotary heating furnace. Now, notice that the rotary heating furnace, you have these metal raw materials that are just thrown into the furnace. But here you have them organized into a row of pipes, right? So this would be a good chance for me to make a compare and contrast to show similarity and difference between the 2 heating processes. So again, girls and guys, here you got to understand that I'm pushing you for a level 9 task 1 response. You could miss this part and still get an easy 7.58, but if you're going for a 9, you have to be really clever and you have to be able to catch this kind of similarity and contrast. So what kind of similarity and what kind of contrast can I discuss or can I describe between the rotary heating furnace and the walking beam furnace? Okay, try to give me your thoughts here. I don't want to spoil it for you, so let me know what you think. So what would be a good compare and contrast between these 2 stages here? So be clever here. There is a similarity and there is a contrast here that I'm looking for. Okay, so compared to the rotary heating furnace, the walking beam furnace requires much more symmetrical fitting as the material. Okay, so yeah, Van Den, I would organize it a little bit different, but yes, you're on the right track. So the walking beam furnace requires more systematic fitting compared to the rotary, which is flexible to various sizes. Sure, and I would even include a similarity here. So similarly to the rotary furnace, the walking beam furnace heats these pipes to a red hot temperature. However, it requires a much more systematic stacking of the materials. Okay, so that would be a good way to describe that. All right, so there's a nice compare and contrast there for you that will get you those higher temperature or higher marks. All right, I'm thinking so much. Let's see what Baljit wrote. So the metal frames have been shaped before going into the walking beam furnace in comparison to the second stage where the raw material is just thrown into the rotary furnace. That's good, Baljit. That's also a good way to say it. Absolutely. Okay? So those are some solid sentences. Just make sure you come up with these ideas. All right, so we made a compare and contrast there. And then we go on to the next 3 steps. Now, here, I don't need to erase the why because, again, you need to have the same questions in your head. So here you have a stretch reducing mill. Okay, so you have a stretch reducing mill and you have a cooling bed. And then you have a batch saw cutting. So here I want to string these together into good cohesive sentences. And I probably want to have a sentence or a transition from the walking beam furnace to the stretch reducing mill. So my next sentence would be combining this step with this step. Okay, can you do that for me? So can you try to go from the walking beam furnace step to the steps to the stretch reducing mill? Okay, So give me an example sentence for that. And again, make sure you're using expressions to join your sentences. All right? Manisha, let's see what you have in your head. We haven't seen your comment in a bit there. Okay, I'll give you a second to think about that. Again, this is for the sponsor, so you get a little bit of extra opportunity here to compose your ideas and your sentences into effective responses. So again, I would go from here to here, okay? You have to have good flow between each of these steps. Let's see what kind of a sentence you can come up with. I can give it to you. I'll give you another couple seconds. Let's see your response. All right. Okay. I'll just... okay, Baljit. After shaping the metal to the desired frame, it goes into the stretch reducing mill. Yeah, sure. That's a good one. We've used after, so I would say next. Next, the heated pipes move into the stretch reducing mill to give them further shape, right? So here, why do we put them into the stretch reducing mill? Because we want to give them the further desired shape. Okay, then they go into the cooling bed. Then the pipes are cooled down in a machine called the cooling bed. Makes sense. So they can be, and this is the why question again. So why do we put them into the cooling bed? So why put them into the cooling bed? Why is this happening? Why put them into the cooling bed? And every time you ask that why question, you're looking at the next step. So here you see that it's a batch cutting. So it means that it's cutting these pipes into the desired length. Yep, to make the shape permanent, absolutely, Vandana. Why else? Why else do I want to cool them before I cut them? So that we make them strong, right? Exactly, Arcana. So we're making them strong. We're making them into a permanent shape. And what would happen? So again, always think about the opposite question as well. If I don't cool down these pipes here, what could happen in the cutting process? Okay, I might not be handling them because these are all done by machines. Yeah, that's right, Arcana. They could bend or they could deform by the cutting blade, plus they could damage the cutting machine, right? So, so they can be chopped to size by the cutting machine without deforming the pipes or the product. Okay, so here, then the pipes are cooled down in a machine called the cooling bed. If you miss a word by accident and you have time to review, make sure you put that back in there. So they can be chopped to size by the cutting machine without deforming the product. Absolutely. Yeah, Baljit, you're reading my mind. Okay, good. So we've gotten that far. We got lots of information. Now, with this kind of a process essay, you might end up with a lot more words than 150. You might even end up with something like 220, 240 words. But that's okay, because with this kind of a diagram, task 1 process essay in academic writing, it goes faster. So if you know what you're writing and you have good thinking, then you can write a lot faster. You don't need to analyze it as much as a whole bunch of pie charts or line graphs. So it's easier to write more words if you have a lot of steps in the process, okay? So after the batch saw cutting, it goes into another machine called the straightener. Why? So why does this size of pipe now go into this straightener machine? What's the logic there? So why put it into another machine to make the pipes straight? Perfectly straight. And these are rollers, very good for recognizing that, Baljit. So you can use that if you have that vocabulary and you know, hey, those look like something that's called rollers, and they are, then you can say rollers in the straightener machine now do something. Why? Okay, so Vandana says, before leaving through the end-facing final step, to cut the ends, the last shape is given by the straightener machine. Now think about the name. It's called a straightener, right? So straight means straight in this case. So of course, when you're buying a pipe for your house, for doing the piping for your water system or industrial system, you need those pipes to be perfectly straight so you can work in straight lines so that it's not bending, right? So it's obviously to meet the market requirement, okay? It's not a polishing machine, it's a straightener machine. You don't need the pipes in your walls to be polished necessarily. So, but you do need them to be straight. So I would write something like this. In the second to last phase, rollers straighten the pipes to meet market requirements. Now this is not guessing or inference, it's very clear. Okay, then in the final step, the pipes pass through an end-facing machine to give them fitting threads so they can be combined. Okay, now if you can see that, I'm not sure how clear it is on your end, but for me it's very large. The end-facing machine, what it's doing is they're actually cutting a little piece of the pipe there at the end so that these pipes can be probably fitted together. Might be a bit of a guess, but you won't be losing marks for that for sure, okay? So the end-facing machine makes a final cut, probably so that when these pipes are purchased, whoever's buying multiple pipes for their desired ring, they can fit them together easily. In the ultimate phase arcana, or penultimate phase, the rollers straighten the pipes. Penultimate is a little bit of an awkward phrase or word to use here, so I might avoid that, okay? I might not use that. I would just say second to last, okay? Second to last is good enough. So here, we're getting to the end now. Then in the final step, the pipes pass through an end-facing machine to give them fitting threads so they can be easily combined, okay? So now you've gotten to the end. We have probably about 160, 70 words so far. And then, as I always suggest, create a summary. Okay? Now, here we can simply leave the last step for our summary as well, so we can include that stage in our summary. What could be a good summary here? So, of course, start by saying in summary, right? And what could be a good summary here? I gave you kind of a hint at the beginning. So remember what I said at the beginning is one of the parts that I could include for the overview, but here I would choose to put it for the summary. So in summary, what happens mostly in the making of these pipes? So again, look at just kind of the general trend here. So you have these raw materials, there's heating, there's shaping, there's some more shaping, there's some more heating, there's some more shaping, there's some cooling, there's some more shaping, which is cutting. Then there's more shaping, and then there's more shaping, and then you have a final product. So what could be a good summary? So Van Denne says, in summary, heating and sizing the raw material are the key components to the pipe manufacturing industry. Yeah, or the pipe manufacturing process in order to have a final desired product, which is the pipe, and then that's good. Exactly, Van Denne, that's right. So that's what I would write for summary. In summary, the two key aspects of this manufacturing process is heating and shaping in order to end with the desired pipe product. Absolutely. Yeah, that would be my last and final sentence to this essay. So let's take a look at this full essay now. Make sure it makes sense. Make sure that we've talked about the entire process and done it in a right way. Let's read it together. So this diagram depicts the steps taken to produce metal pipes for the home and commercial markets. The starting raw material is a cylindrical solid metal pipe which is used to produce the end product. There are 10 stages from start to finish in this manufacturing process. First, the raw metal billet is heated using a rotary furnace to make it soft to be punctured by the piercer in the next step. Afterwards, the metal tubes go through a shaping and sizing process in the MPM machine so they can fit into the walking beam furnace. Similarly to the rotary furnace, the walking beam furnace heats these pipes to a red-hot temperature. However, it requires a much more systematic stacking of the materials. Next, heated pipes move into the stretch-reducing mill to give them further shape. Then, the pipes are cooled down in a machine called the cooling bed so they can be chopped to size by the cutting machine without deforming the product. In the second to last phase, rollers straighten the pipes to meet market requirements. Then, in the final step, the pipes pass through an end-facing machine to give them fitting threads so they can be combined. In summary, the two key aspects of this manufacturing process is heating and shaping in order to end with a desired pipe product. All right, now I promise that if you write something like that, you should get a 9 on that essay. Okay. So notice how some of the key vocabulary here are first, next, afterwards, second to last, finally. So all of these words you want to review, okay? Review how I'm using them. The other key aspect of this type of essay are the verbs. You have to be very careful with your verb choice. So piercing, puncturing, cutting, shaping, used, and so on. Notice an interesting type of grammar that comes into this type of essay. Next, the heated pipes move into the stretch-reducing mill. What is a very common grammar structure that can be seen in this essay? Not past tense. It's not just past tense. There's another kind of grammar that's really key and useful for this type of process essay. It's not past. You want to stay in present tense for this kind of essay for most parts. So what are you using? Not just present simple, Manisha, but what are you using here? Let me see if I can find some examples here. Look at this first one. The raw metal billet is heated using a rotary furnace to make it soft to be punctured by the piercer in the next step. Let's correct that. It's the passive, that's right, Manisha, passive voice. Yeah, often here we don't know who's actually doing the action, so passive voice can be very important grammar for this type of essay, for the process diagram essay in task 1. So make sure that you know how to write correct passive voice sentences, because here oftentimes you don't know who's actually doing it. There could be a guy that takes the pipes and moves it to the furnace, but you can't say the guy or the girl moves it. You don't know that. It could also be a machine. So you need to know the passive voice, which is the pipes are then moved to the furnace, right? So you're using passive voice in this kind of a sentence often. All right, I hope this makes sense. I hope this is clear. Again, review it, practice it. Do you have any questions, girls and guys? So going out to the sponsors here, do you have any questions about this kind of essay? Exactly, Manisha. The doer, I mean, of course, in some parts, the doer is the machine, but in some parts, you don't know who the doer of the action is, so you need to use passive voice for this kind of essay in many cases, definitely. Any questions, Baljit, Arcana, Manisha? Any questions about this one? Anything that's not clear that you want me to expand on, explain a little bit more? This is your chance. This class is for you, so it's for the sponsors. Any questions with this essay or with process essays in task 1? This question, yes, is coming out of our AE Help materials. It's not uploaded to the task 1 set yet, but it will be very shortly. This is one of our original ones. Yes, Arcana, the comparison is definitely a good idea. So in this sentence here, where we compare the two furnaces, yeah, that's a good idea. It's a good idea to try to find some kind of a comparison in the process, okay? If you miss a step, you might lose a mark, Vandana, because your essay starts to become incoherent. So if I take out one of these steps and it jumps in the process, it might become a little bit confusing to the reader what's actually happening to the product. So you definitely don't want to miss any steps, okay? Make sure you include all the steps. Manisha, it's okay to go beyond the required limit. In fact, I'll tell you how many words this one is. The question always says minimum. So your task completion is a minimum. So it says minimum 150 words. That means if you are trying to get a 9, you have to get at least... you have to get at least 150 words. This essay is 220 words, okay? So this is 70 words more. But as I mentioned, you try to get a minimum of 150 words. And with a process essay, you can easily get to 200 if you describe all of the steps properly and connect them, okay? So Manisha, if your words go beyond the required limit, that's good, okay? Because it's minimum. There's no maximum. You're just going to run out of time. Vandana, you can usually check that out online. So IELTS.org usually has specifics about exam dates, so you can check that out. Okay. If you can't find the information, you can call your test center, and they should be able to give you more information if you're missing some of that information. So either call the test center if it's British Council or an IDP affiliate. They should have answers for you, and you can usually find a lot of answers online as well. IELTS.org will often have answers about exam dates and locations. All right, so check that out. Make sure you guys and girls study. 23rd is coming up soon. Invest that time. If there are no more questions about task 1, then we'll finish up for today. Again, for all those students who are watching, remember tomorrow we'll have a reading passage. That will be a little bit later in the day. It'll be 16:30 to 17:30. This one here on the 14th. We'll look at a reading section. Make sure to go to our websites and use them because they will help you to succeed. ahelp.com for academic IELTS and gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. Baljit, Manisha, Vandana, Great seeing you in class today. I hope some of our other sponsors will catch up and watch this video afterwards on our channel. Thank you to everybody else who's watching right now. Also, make sure to study at home. If you have any questions, don't be shy. You can send me an email to adrian@aehelp.com, or you can contact us through the websites as well. Keep up the good studies. Again, sponsors, if you have some special requests about any kind of topic in the IELTS that you want me to go into more detail for these kinds of classes, just send me an email and I'll set up the class time and the topic, and then we'll do it together. Okay, no, there's no non-sponsors class Baljeet today. I have a busy afternoon, so I won't have time for it, so it will be tomorrow. Okay, bye for now, girls and guys. Have an awesome rest of your day. Good studies, good rest, great sleep if it's late in your country, and I wish you a fresh and strong start to the day tomorrow. Bye for now.